Today we have a full, complete, start to finish overview documentary of everything relating to Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files. This may be one of the most comprehensive views of the entire story that you've ever seen. And throughout, I plan to bring you any extra details that I know from being someone that's been researching this for the past few months. Now, this is a long deep dive. It's actually one that I'm gonna be taking a seat for because, well, it's that in depth. As we're watching, I'm gonna be drinking my iced coffee. Let me know what you have in your hand. What are you drinking? And thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and becoming a subscriber.
It was the moment that caught the world by surprise.
Bombshell arrest of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation.
Former Prince Andrew under arrest. The shock etched on his face.
Everybody is equal and nobody is above the law.
Questioned under caution like a common criminal.
Your Majesty, how are you feeling after your brother's arrest?
The ex-royal is the biggest casualty so far in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
It's an unprecedented moment.
A scandal that reaches from beyond the grave.
This is where the house of cards starts falling.
As the disgraced financiers' dirty secrets threaten to tear down society's most powerful.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question. Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Tonight, the unraveling of Jeffrey Epstein, how he conned the world,
This is not just a story about a supervillain.
how he became a billionaire and one of the worst sex traffickers in history.
You need to know the deep and dark secrets of everything else. It's just sickening.
And how the morally corrupt were happy to play and do business with a pedophile.
Breaking news out of Washington, the Justice Department just dropped a trove of new documents.
The latest release of files is shocking in its size and its content.
Breaking news, Peter Mandelson has been led from home by police.
From Britain, Norway and India to Wall Street.
Is this insider dealing? Is there stuff that he said that people could trade on?
From royalty to tech giants, business titans and politicians.
Epstein is a Democrat hoax.
The fallout is global as the world's elite takes cover.
My wife and I decide that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
I did have lunch with him.
You misled the country and the Congress.
They knew this all along.
We tracked down the people who knew him from the beginning.
It's here the saga of Jeffrey Epstein really began.
His brother. Joking about pedophilia, it's a bit close to the bone, isn't it, when your brother is a pedophile?
I'm going to hang up on you.
His former lover.
I liked him because he seemed to be the center of the universe.
And those who now wish they never knew him.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
And I'm not going to move on until we see some men perp walked to prison.
I think we're having a reckoning.
Is there actually criminal stuff in these files?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, if that doesn't hit you as an intro, that is a great initial summary of what we've seen from the Epstein files so far.
It makes you mad. It's like, why did it take this long for someone to listen? Who was Jeffrey?
Now, the crazy thing is that even since this video was made, no more arrests have happened, no more diving into things, no more information, or at least no more information that was actually damning to anyone that was involved. Nothing more has come of it because things have been halted. And many people ask the question, why? Who doesn't want this out? Who's hiding what's in the Epstein files? Who's protecting all of these criminals? And I always love going into the comments and seeing how so many people actually disagree.
Who covered for him? What financial institutions allowed his trafficking to continue? Who knew what he was doing, but was too much of a coward to do anything about it?
Now, throughout this video, you're going to see a lot of the victims, as you are right now, speaking. Something I also do here on the channel is go into live interviews with Epstein victims, seeing everything that they had to say, allowing them to share their entire story. We did 2 of those interviews last week, and I have more to come. So make sure you give support to these women as well, and listen to their full stories, they could all be found in my playlist on the main channel that is for Epstein victims.
As an adult, Jenna Lisa Jones wants answers to what happened to her as a child. She was only 14 years old when she was led into a bedroom in a Palm Beach mansion.
14.
This was me at 14 years old. I was a child. I was in 9th grade.
As a teenager, she knew what the world is learning now through the Epstein files. The man she met that day, Jeffrey Epstein, was a serial sexer of young girls.
I want you all to think back, because I know most of you that watch this channel are adults. The majority of you. I have a young son, I have 2 young sons, but one of them very much near the age of her when she was victimized. And it's very hard to believe that something that terrible could happen to someone at that age, because they're so young. They're such a child. So I challenge all of you to think back to your children, nieces, nephews that are around 13, 14, 15 years old, and imagine something this terrible happening to them and how you would feel being someone that loves that child if our government, our society, our systems weren't doing anything to protect them, still to this day.
No one was coming to help her, and no one was going to stop him. Are you completely behind the release of these files?
I am behind the complete release of these files. This is disgusting stuff we're talking about. We're talking about children's lives, young women's lives. This is sickening.
More than 1,000 women say they were abused as part of Epstein's sex trafficking ring, many of the victims revealed in the files. It seems to expose a very dark world, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's everything that you thought that could possibly, those conspiracy theories. This is just going to show you this is exactly what happens behind the closed doors.
The Epstein files are over 3 million documents, videos and photographs detailing over 2 decades of crimes. There are incriminating emails between the sex offender and the world's elite. Interviews with the predator himself.
And what were those felonies that you pled guilty to?
Solicitation of prostitutes. Not underage prostitutes, but simply prostitutes. Solicitation of prostitutes, and 1 count of procuring a minor for underage sex.
There's evidence of the debauchery. As well as just how prized Epstein was as a key member of the billion.
Take a look at that picture right there, my friends. Now, of course, this, I believe, was their trip to Africa or something like that when they were going to do good things. Look at the faces there. There's quite a few faces that you're going to recognize. Curious as to who the one that's redacted, though, in the center is.
Cozy with politicians, royals, the world famous, and the mega rich.
Mega rich.
Death cannot protect Epstein or his mates, with his files the most scrutinized instrument of accountability in the world.
And the perpetrators are being protected because they're rich and powerful and political donors to the establishment here in Washington, D.C.
Pulling back the curtain on the evil Epstein empire is Thomas Massie, a Republican congressman from Kentucky, who co-wrote the Epstein Files Transparency Act, compelling the U.S. Department of Justice to produce the files.
This might not be the biggest issue in America right now, but it is the issue everybody can agree on.
When I heard the victims talk, I realized what they had been living with, the shame that they had been living with for so many years, and why this was another level of evil.
How big a scandal do you believe this is?
This spans 4 presidents, part of a 2-decade-long cover-up.
Now, everyone is quick to jump at President Trump, for good reason, in my opinion. But 4 presidents. The Epstein Files has been going on for our past 4 presidents, 5 if you include Trump's 2 separate terms. They all knew about it, whether they engaged or didn't, they all knew about it and nothing was done. Whether you like the presidents or whether you don't like the presidents, over the last 4 of them, there has to be one that you agreed with because they were probably with your political party. They all knew and they all did nothing.
You know, we've seen that some of the richest people on the planet have the lowest moral standards on the planet.
So far, there's been an avalanche of scandalous revelations.
It is extraordinary. After millions of documents were released in the Epstein investigation, it has triggered international and political fallout.
But by far, the most consequential is this royal reckoning decades in the making.
Fox News Alert, we begin this hour with a breaking news story out of the UK.
BBC understands that he has been arrested.
It's believed the first British royal arrested in nearly 400 years.
An arrest of this magnitude has no precedent in modern British history.
As the world watched, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was hauled in by police for 11 hours of questioning on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
This is not, at least not yet, about sex trafficking.
Police are investigating a handful of emails uncovered in the Epstein files. They appear to show Andrew, once an official trade envoy, sharing government secrets directly with his sex offender friend. But there's more, from trading secrets to trading young women.
Apparently Epstein had offered to arrange for Andrew to have dinner with a 26-year-old clever, beautiful, trustworthy Russian woman. And Andrew apparently responded that he would be delighted.
The creepy ex-duke was also caught out unceremoniously on all fours in Epstein's home.
These are the latest pictures of the man formerly known as Prince Andrew.
For his sins, the king's brother has already been kicked out of his royal lodgings, stripped of his titles, and now at least 9 police departments are probing his true ties to Epstein.
I have simply no recollection.
From former prince to president.
This is something that we continuously hear. No recollection. That's not saying they didn't do it. It's saying that they don't remember. And it's a cop-out type of a response, in my opinion. When you ask someone, did you do something? And they say, I just don't remember. In my opinion, that's incriminating in itself.
Donald Trump's name appears thousands of times in the Epstein files in uncorroborated and often bizarre tip-offs, providing endless fodder for laughs.
Wouldn't it just be easier to call this the Trump Files featuring Jeffrey Epstein? Rolls off the tongue.
The panel and president were certainly friends before a falling out in 2004, though Trump has long maintained he knew nothing of Epstein's crimes.
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. I haven't spoken to him in many, many years, but I did have no idea.
But a claim made in the files contradicts that. In an unexpected twist, Trump has been credited with contacting police when Epstein was first arrested on sex charges in 2006. Trump reportedly said, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this."
Well, that's exactly the opposite thing that he said on camera just a minute ago.
He described Epstein as disgusting and the financier's girlfriend and co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, as evil, clearly indicating he was aware of their crimes years ago, despite saying otherwise.
I think one of the dangers here is that this entire process gets so politicized that it loses any semblance of credibility. But I really think that most people here, their interest in this is not about scoring political points, it's about understanding the truth.
I agree with that.
To find that truth, there are calls for the Department of Justice to do more, to thoroughly investigate the connections and allegations made in the files.
Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure?
It's a high-stakes search for clues to the real mystery.
I think Mossy is doing a great job, by the way, in digging deeper and pressing harder to try to have these files released.
Who this man actually was, what he was doing, and with whom. Exactly why the world's most powerful people were drawn into his orbit. Is there any sense of, we told you so? We told you that this badness was happening?
I think there's a lot of anger there. We've been telling you all along how bad this man was and what was going on, and it has taken this long. It's like, why did it take this long for someone to listen?
To understand the monster that Jeffrey Epstein became, you really need to go back to the beginning and understand where he came from and how he got there.
Snowy Seagate in Brooklyn, New York, feels a million miles away from the fallout of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal gripping the world.
This is the house up here where Jeffrey Epstein was raised.
But this humble home, in this working-class enclave, is where the disgraced financier lived for 2 decades. And to understand how he clawed his way to the top, you need to hear from the people who knew him first, like his old classmate, Philip Messing.
When I knew Jeffrey Epstein, you know, he was just another kid that was trying to get through puberty and like hoping that he wasn't victimized by acne. You know, I mean, he was really, you know, nobody. And Jeffrey was a very, very good math student, but everything about him like had a certain, it may have been shyness, but it was almost a supercilious air about him.
As a kid, Epstein, known as Bear, was also a gifted musician, but his mates knew money was what drove him most, and a deep desire to escape the neighborhood.
I'll tell you this. Many of us are driven by money. Who doesn't like money? It doesn't lead us, though, to doing criminal things and terrible things to young girls. That's not an excuse.
Jeffrey Epstein, back at the time I went to school with him, told a classmate of ours that he would definitely be rich someday. But nobody could have ever envisioned that Jeffrey Epstein would turn into the villain that we now know of, victimizing hordes and hordes of women, young women.
Epstein's rise to the top was fast-tracked by his drive and his ability to lie. By 21, he might have been a college dropout with no degree and 0 credentials, but he somehow secured a prize teaching job at Dalton, one of New York's most prestigious high schools. It took a level of chutzpah that David Enrich, deputy investigations editor of the New York Times, can only admire.
It's easy for me to imagine that he marched himself into the headmaster's office at Dalton and just started talking as if he belonged there, and the headmaster clearly bought it. And that is one of the constant lessons of the Epstein saga over the years, is that the more information you get, the more questions it tends to raise.
The audacious ascent of the kid from Brooklyn had begun. At the time, Scott Spicer was a student and, like Epstein, an outsider in this privileged place.
I'll tell you, you have to give some credit to the drive. It's drive like Epstein has that can lead to great things. Unfortunately, he took that drive that most people don't have, mind you, and he put it towards evil. This is like what we see in superhero movies. The evil versus the good. They both have the drive, the motivation, the strength to grow. But what makes someone grow in the good direction and what makes someone grow in that evil direction? We already know now that Epstein grew himself in the wrong direction.
But even he felt there was something off with the maths and physics teacher.
What I remember is seeing him in a circle of female students and always kind of being taken aback by that. But at that time, it was just very distinct that, okay, well, that's different. That's not what I'm used to. That seems not entirely okay, but what do I know? I'm a 16, 17-year-old knucklehead.
Knucklehead or not, Scott witnessed Epstein get unusually close to the sons, but mainly the daughters, of the global establishment.
He was a teacher who seemed to show up at social events, parties, gatherings. Everything seemed very blurred in terms of the boundaries between students and him.
By the time that he left there 2 years later, in 1976, the school was basically chasing him out. They felt that his performance as a teacher was not strong enough to merit his continued employment. And luckily for Jeffrey Epstein, and unluckily enough for the rest of us, Epstein found another place to work very soon after that.
That place was Bear Stearns, Wall Street's infamous cowboy investment bank.
When you make money, we make money.
A powerhouse that didn't care for credentials, which was lucky given Epstein didn't have any, though he claimed he did. When his lies were exposed, instead of being shown the door, he was given a second chance.
This would be the first episode in a whole series of them over the ensuing decades in which Epstein was caught red-handed, and instead of being punished in a serious way, people opted to look the other way, and so he was able to keep rolling forward with impunity.
But even Bear Stearns grew tired of Epstein's shady deals and abuse of expenses, poised to punish him with a fine and a 2-month suspension. Instead, Epstein quit and set up on his own. But it didn't matter. His old company was more than happy to continue doing business with him.
He left and started tapping right back into that network, and it led him to be introduced to some very powerful businessmen in various parts of the world. It allowed him to partner up with some Bear Stearns clients whose money he ended up stealing.
The problem here is, and the reality of all this is, people that make money, in this case Bear Stearns, will do anything to make more money, even if it's to work with someone that they already know is corrupt. They knew then Jeffrey Epstein was corrupt, but he was able to make them more money. He was able to make their clients more money. So they chose to continue working with him.
His connections also saw him partner up with young women, delivered directly to his apartment by his old bosses at Bear Stearns, including office assistant, 23-year-old Patricia Schmidt.
I was sent over there because my boss had asked me to deliver some papers to him. And I went after work, and I did exactly that. I think it was clearly my boss doing him a favor.
But Patricia was immediately hooked, and she and Epstein started a year-long consensual relationship.
He seemed to be kind of the center of the universe. He was so confident, and he was so attractive, and he was so incredibly smart.
So what you're saying is it wasn't transactional?
No, nothing about it was transactional.
Did you fall in love with him?
I think so, yes. And I remember thinking, gosh, when is he gonna call again?
Patricia kept a diary of her time with Epstein.
Who knows what he really thinks of me?
It's a glimpse into their romance, but 40 years on, Patricia recognises Epstein also treated her as currency, and she would prove to be the blueprint he'd use against so many other women.
This is actually so interesting because this was potentially one of his first true victims. It's someone that trained him, or he used as a training tool that he then used against hundreds of other girls and women as time went on. This woman clearly loved him.
Jeffrey phoned me yesterday and asked if I'd show a friend of his around Bear Stearns. His friend arrived with his father, both from Switzerland.
Did you ever feel exploited by him or used by him?
He would ask me to meet clients, friends of his, go to lunch or go to dinner.
Do you think he was supplying you to these men to have sex with them?
I have to think absolutely yes. I never did. I wasn't interested in any of these men. But, oh yes, I think it was very much his intent to make that trade.
But it's how Epstein turned his financial trades into mega millions that has long fascinated investigative journalist David Enrich. He's been digging into how the working class kid accumulated so much wealth so quickly.
Epstein fashioned himself as this financial whiz that basically was unparalleled. One of the things we saw, though, the deeper we dug, was that the real way that Epstein was making money over and over again for year after year after year was lying.
I was just going to say, that I think he was a master manipulator. Now, yes, he was good with math. He was probably a good financial advisor for many, but he was a manipulator and a liar and lied his way to the top, having so many people pay him tons of money based off of those lies.
Cheating and conning people.
It seems the Financial Whiz Kid Act worked on someone who should have known better. A whale of the business world, Leslie Wexner is the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret. But in the late 80s, he met Epstein. And as this document shows, in 1991, Wexner gave him power of attorney, putting him in charge of billions of dollars and launching Epstein into the stratosphere of the global elite. Wexner was the money behind the monster.
Wexner had granted Epstein virtually unfettered control over his entire multi-billion-dollar fortune. And this vaulted Epstein from being kind of a single-digit millionaire, perhaps, into someone who would, in short order, become one of the richest people in the United States.
It will not be on the video, but we do have it recorded.
The latest trove of Epstein files threw up this gem when in 2019, Epstein seemed assured he was the financial genius he sold himself as.
Do you think that there's anybody that understands money or understands the world's financial system as good as you?
There must be.
But it doesn't come to the top of the head?
No.
Okay, fine.
This pseudo-interview in 2019 with firebrand Trump advisor Steve Bannon was meant to be a training session to help Epstein rehabilitate his reputation.
Right.
Its recent release in the files is an intriguing insight into a man just months away from having his privileged world ripped away.
For context here, this interview was being done. It was supposed to be some type of like a Netflix special or something that was supposed to give another look at Jeffrey Epstein, redefine who he was, and essentially kind of purify who he is so that the world didn't look at him like this awful person. But clearly it didn't go that way.
I just asked a question. Is your money dirty money?
No, it's not. So, in fact...
Why is it not dirty money?
Because I earned it.
But you earned it.
I earned it legally.
We went back to this before. You earned
Yes.
it. You earned it advising the worst people in the world, right? That do enormous bad things, and just to make more money. What are you, class 3 sexual predator?
Tier 1.
What's tier 1's the highest and worst?
No, I'm
the lowest.
I'm the lowest.
You're the lowest. Okay, tier 1, you're the lowest.
The lowest. How is he categorized as the lowest offender? Because he's clearly one of the worst we've ever seen.
This is my swimming pool. No one's allowed to dock here.
Here's his island.
My beach.
It's gorgeous.
The Epstein files are an X-ray of the extraordinary life Jeffrey Epstein was enjoying at the peak of his power. Long gone was the working-class boy from Brooklyn. This was a man with billions to spend and no shortage of things to buy.
From sun up, sundown, we get money, 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 money.
The photos that we've seen are revealing in a number of ways. First and foremost, it shows the just enormous amount of stuff that hundreds of millions of dollars can buy, whether it is mansions, private planes, private islands.
He might have had plenty of money, but Epstein needed something more. And he found it in Ghislaine Maxwell. The British socialite gave him entree to the upper-class world of prestige, glamour, and on the surface at least, respectability.
She was someone who was basically an aristocrat. She rolled in aristocratic circles, and she brought Epstein along for that ride. And it was around this time that Epstein starts showing up at the White House, for example, and starts interacting with people like Prince Andrew. It creates this aura around him that he is one of the best connected and most powerful people in the world. That helps him attract new people who will help him make more money. It helps him lure more young women and girls into his web, and it allows Epstein to become who he became. And Maxwell played an instrumental role in that.
I mean, he clearly had a relationship with her. She was clearly a part in his business, his machine, his system to bring new women. But as mentioned, she was a socialite. She was highly prestiged, as was her father. And she allowed Epstein to take his system, his organization, and move it up to the next level. Meeting people he'd never be able to meet before, introducing him to people that he'd never would have known before, and essentially just strengthening his machine.
But as we're reminded in this release of the files, behind the opulence, this depraved couple was running an international sex trafficking ring and systematically girls as young as 14.
So this is Okeechobee Middle School. I went to school here on and off from 6th grade to 8th grade. Feels weird. It feels ghostly. This is the start of where my whole world changed. So it's emotional and makes me angry.
A broken kid from a broken home, Jenna Lisa Jones was just 14 when she was lured into Epstein's vile world in 2004 by his network of young recruiters. How did your world collide with his?
We were all hanging out and listening to music, and then they were making jokes, and they started making jokes about a guy named Jeff, and he was like a weird old guy that liked to get massages, and he would pay $200, and $200 sounded great. I mean, my mom was addicted to drugs. There was times I didn't have food, had nowhere, so.
A vulnerable young girl who heard $200 and said, that is so valuable to me. I'll go give this old creep a massage for $200.
It seemed, why not?
It seemed like the only decision you could make in that moment as a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
A decision forced by circumstances that completely altered Jenna Lisa's life.
Yeah.
She'd been delivered into a rock spider's web at the mansion in Palm Beach, Florida. It was just 10 kilometres from her trailer park neighbourhood, but in every other sense, a world away.
He walked in pretty quickly, and he laid down on the massage table like he was a regular massage. And after a couple minutes, he just flips over, and it was see how far, he could push it.
What was he telling you to do?
Think about the worst thing that you would want to happen, wouldn't want to happen to your child, and it was happening. That's what was happening in those rooms with these victims and with myself. It was traumatizing. It set the tone for the rest of my life.
Jenna Lisa was not alone in her suffering, but she wasn't aware police were finally closing in on the predator.
Not that it mattered.
I've talked to a lot of girls, almost 40 girls so far. And so I know pretty much what transpires, okay?
For the first time, the 2007 draft indictment is on the public record. It's shocking reading. 32 counts of sex crimes against minors. Their sordid stories captured in these police interviews.
She told me that all I had to do was give him a massage and he would give me $200. It was a weird situation.
Did you ever take your panties off and be completely nude?
Every now and then, yeah. I was unaware that I was going to be alone with him for that 10 minutes, and I thought I was going to die.
Police thought they had a watertight case, and if convicted, Epstein faced going to jail for the rest of his life. Instead, in a shocking secret sweetheart deal with prosecutors, he pleaded guilty to 2 minor charges only: procuring a child for prostitution and soliciting a prostitute. He served a mere 13 months in jail, but was barely ever in his cell.
How many days a week are you out on work release?
6.
And of those 6 days, how many hours per day are you out on work release?
12.
So he was literally only in jail, let's say on Sundays, for 24 hours. Every other day, he was out of the jail for 12 hours per day. And he was supposed to stay in his home. to do business and whatnot. But he was still out and everywhere and in his helicopter and jet and plane going wherever he wanted to go. And he probably wasn't back by curfew either. So essentially, he was only spending 13 months in prison 1 day per week. And the other time, he was just sleeping in a cozy cell by himself.
They did this whole investigation on him and he didn't even get in trouble. He didn't get in trouble. It enraged me. And I have 2 children of my own, 2 daughters that are going to school on Palm Beach Island, who go to school a mile away from his house. That really set in. It made me realize he was still out there doing that. And it could have been my kids next.
Gotta move.
Some of the public stories.
But in this interview, released in the recent file dump, Epstein is begrudging his short stint in jail.
I'd been there since June, in an 8x10 cell with a bed in the back, a 6-foot bed in the back, a chrome sink with a toilet attached to it, and a little piece of metal sticking out that was supposed to act as a table.
Even though Jeffrey Epstein was shocked to be behind bars, it's hard to imagine that those who knew him would have been. Nothing speaks to his perversions more than his 50th birthday book, compiled in 2003. It's a 238-page album littered with innuendo and sexual references, purportedly from Jeffrey's high-flying friend.
Yeah, this book itself gives you vision into who was involved with him and how deeply they were involved.
To me, the most galling and shocking thing was that it was really clear that it was an open secret among these dozens of people who contributed to the birthday book that Epstein had an unhealthy predilection for young women and sometimes girls. It was a big inside joke, and everyone was in on it other than the victims.
Many were happy to continue with the joke, even when in 2008 Jeffrey Epstein became a registered sex offender. Nor did his shameful classification stop his trafficking. But the files show he may have got more careful, recruiting young women instead of minors.
This was something that he was operating on an international scale. He was bringing in women from all over Eastern Europe and getting them into the United States, offering to pay their tuition, put them up in housing, set them up with bank accounts, and they were then beholden to him, and that's exactly what Epstein wanted.
For the next 10 years, Epstein operated with near impunity until intense media scrutiny and fresh allegations of abuse forced authorities in New York to act.
Yeah.
On the 6th of July 2019, Epstein flew into New Jersey aboard his private plane. Unaware, police were waiting.
Breaking news, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein arrested on new sex trafficking charges.
The 66-year-old is being held in New York, where he's expected to be arraigned tomorrow.
A month later, the Brooklyn grifter turned global predator was found dead in his jail cell.
When Epstein died in 2019, we were just starting to kind of scratch the surface of understanding what made him tick, who had enabled him, how he had gotten so much money, and whose secrets he was hiding.
In my opinion, there are still so many people that we can learn this information from, but all of these people are being so tight-lipped because the network is all connected, and if one opens their mouth, all go down.
Accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein is dead, taking his own life in a New York City jail cell.
A long way from the prestigious world Jeffrey Epstein was used to, he spent his last month alive in this Manhattan prison.
Epstein's cell.
Amongst the millions of photographs, videos, and records released in the Epstein files are these sobering images, taken on August the 10th, 2019, documenting the demise of the disgraced predator.
The 66-year-old multimillionaire had been awaiting trial at New York City's Metropolitan Correctional Center.
The news was devastating for Epstein's survivors, including Jenna Lisa Jones, who was just 14 when she was by him.
Now, you would think that a lot of the people, the victims, would be happy that he's finally done, he's gone. but he never had to pay for his crimes. He never had to come clean of his crimes. And these girls could never receive the justification that they really were all looking for.
What was it like for you to learn that Jeffrey Epstein was dead?
I remember being so mad and saying, so I'm never gonna get my day for him to hear me. I even texted the FBI agent and I told her, I said, so he wins again. And he did.
The official ruling was suicide. But almost immediately came the unsubstantiated and seemingly wild speculation about who Epstein was in life.
Have you paid attention to this Jeffrey Epstein stuff?
Yeah, a little bit.
What do you think's going on?
That the financier was really a spy.
He represents no government. He clearly works for Mossad. He clearly works for CIA.
That he dabbled in the occult and carried out satanic rituals.
We're about to expose you. You're going to prove you're loyal. You're going to kill that little girl.
And that he was a keeper of dark secrets of the most powerful people in the world, who in turn had him killed.
Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up! I know he's your friend, but I don't care.
We don't know why there was not more CCTV footage available. We don't know why the prison guards all fell asleep. There are a lot of unanswered questions here. And it is enough to leave a reasonable person wondering if we know the full story about this.
That full story, according to Mark Epstein, is that his brother was murdered. He's more than willing to talk about why he rules out suicide, just not face to face. Mark, now I've got to ask, why are we doing this over the phone? Why won't you talk to me on camera?
Well, because this is not about me. I'm not looking for fame or fortune or my 15 minutes. I don't need that. I want people to focus on the fact that Jeffrey is murdered.
Mark has spent years challenging the official account of his older brother's death.
It was not suicide. That's bullshit.
You have to wonder, did he know what his brother was doing? Was he involved in any way? Did they have family gatherings around these types of activities? Hard to believe that he wouldn't have known, but you don't know.
It doesn't say that on your show.
That's all right. He changed his will in the days leading up to his death. Does that not point to suicide?
No, because when I heard that, I looked into that. It's a legitimate question. But I checked with his attorneys, and it turns out he has changed his will a number of times.
So then that raises the question that if it's murder, who, why, and how?
Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to find out.
The siblings led separate lives, but were close even after Mark was made aware of his brother's crimes against children.
So we did know.
In your opinion, was your brother a good man?
My brother was wrong for what he did. You know, he was with girls that were too young. Other than that, people might want to hear it. He was a pretty interesting guy. He was a pretty good guy.
But this disturbing email interchange between the brothers emerged from the trove of files released in January. In 2012, Mark joked that a trip between his brother and Woody Allen to Paris was for a convention.
Jeffrey and I used to joke about a lot of things. So you can't take the things that I say in jest and put more weight to it than other than that it was just, you take something funny. We make each other laugh.
But joking about failure, it's a bit close to the bone, isn't it, when your brother is a...
I'm going to hang up on you if you continue to talk about things other than his death.
See that? Very protective of things. Now, obviously, I get being protective of family. But it's just strange.
Keep going off topic.
You have spoken at length about your suspicions of him being murdered.
I'm going to hang up on you. So have a great day.
Of course, as we've seen from the ongoing fallout and furor, Mark Epstein's name is not the only one to appear in the mountain of files.
Elon Musk asking Jeffrey Epstein, when is the wildest party on Epstein Island going to be?
Each day, it seems, there's another name and another headline.
An international domino effect as millions of documents reveal Epstein was connected to the global elite.
The most high-profile fall from grace came with the shock arrest of the former prince, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, under suspicion of sharing trade secrets with Epstein. But there have been others with mass resignations and reckonings across business, academia, and foreign politics.
Lots of
The
familiar
Met
faces.
said Lord Mandelson was being investigated on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
Former Prime Minister of Norway has been charged with gross corruption.
Sarah Ferguson also now facing new questions. She's now shutting down 6 of her companies.
Media mogul and chairman of the 2028 LA Olympics Organizing Committee, Casey Wasserman, now selling his talent agency amid major fallout over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
The shocking revelations just keep coming. One of the wealthiest people in the world, Bill Gates, allegedly leaned on Epstein for pharmaceuticals and Russian girls.
In the documents, Epstein wrote that Gates begged him to please delete their emails regarding a sexually transmitted disease and antibiotics.
The email is, false. So I don't know what his thinking was there.
Obviously, since this time he has come out, he's admitted to being with Russian women and cheating on his wife, but nothing with anyone that was underage or anything like that.
A wellness guru prescribing health advice between vulgar emails.
Peter Attia was mentioned almost 2,000 times in the Epstein files. Attia wrote one email to Epstein in February of 2016 that a woman's private parts were low carb. You have an email from June 24, 2015, where Attia seemingly writes, "The biggest problem with becoming friends with you, the life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul."
Also buried in the files are many more deeply disturbing emails.
There are a lot of bad people involved here. The little girl.
As you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. And so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein.
But Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, who has been instrumental in the release of the files, has no regrets about the worldwide exposure of those who appear in them.
There's some collateral damage to people's reputations, and frankly, I'm not sorry about it. If you went to the island where women were to have a vacation with a known sex offender, and now you're embarrassed, I'm sorry.
There's lots of embarrassing stuff, but is there actually criminal stuff in these files, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. The question is, are the allegations true or not? And the way you determine that is you have an investigation and you have a trial.
Now, I believe Thomas Massie has seen the files in full, unredacted, so he would know.
And that's how you get to the truth in this country. And all of those steps have been truncated because these are rich and powerful men.
Yes. They're being blocked.
What's galling for so many is that no one, other than Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, has been convicted for their role in the sex trafficking ring. But as the Epstein files show, the FBI has known for years who the alleged co-conspirators are. Confoundingly, they're protected, their names and faces redacted.
We're doing everything we can.
Attorney General Pam Bondi is under intense pressure.
No longer Attorney General. She's been released since the making of this video.
Explain why there have been no investigations to prosecute or clear those who appear in the files.
The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking. Co-conspirators, fully redacted.
Who are the co-conspirators on your hit list? Who should the authorities be going after?
From what I can see right now, it looks like Leslie Wexner. The FBI owes us an explanation for how they decided to no longer pursue him.
Billionaire Les Wexner was the mogul behind Victoria's Secret and Epstein's cash cow until the 88-year-old had a falling out with a financial advisor, accusing him of embezzlement.
Well, I didn't know he was stealing till after we discovered that he was a crook.
At a recent congressional hearing, Wexner denied any knowledge of Epstein's crimes, but he stands accused of being his greatest enabler.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein abuse young women or girls?
Absolutely not.
The role that Wexner played in Epstein's development into someone who could construct a huge international trafficking operation, it's really hard to overstate.
The billionaire gave Epstein a big financial leg up, but draft letters Epstein wrote to himself, uncovered in the files, have raised new questions about what else, if anything, Wexner knew.
One thing that makes no sense is that Wexner would have willingly paid Epstein simply for the services he was providing, and that the payments would total hundreds of millions of dollars. That is preposterous. It makes no sense.
Hundreds of
Either
millions.
Epstein was doing something aside from just providing kind of run-of-the-mill financial services, or he was stealing from Wexner, or perhaps both.
For Jeffrey Epstein's victims, so much hope is riding on the files, not just delivering accusations, but also justice. The fear is their hope is doomed.
There was nothing in there that allowed us to prosecute anybody.
The stance has been that it is unlikely that there will be further prosecutions leading from the Epstein file dump. What's your reaction to that?
It could make me cry that we're gonna just let these people get away with it because of who they are.
I would love to hear some of these victims just straight out give us a list of names.
And the power that they have.
I believe them.
It took one woman's voice to trigger the global earthquake that is the Epstein files.
It takes trust. It takes a lot of trust with horses. And if you're kind to them, they're kind to you back.
When I first met Virginia Giuffre 7 years ago, she shared a story so sprawling and so dark that it was near impossible to fathom. She had the courage to speak out against power and privilege when it was just her word against theirs.
She paid
What
the price.
sort of men were you being trafficked to?
I was trafficked to other billionaires. I was trafficked to politicians, professors, even royalty. It was the most powerful people in the world, and those are our leaders. Those are the people that we are supposed to look up to. It's corrupt. It's corrupt to the core.
And it was this photo that changed everything. The 17-year-old Virginia captured in 2001, uncomfortably close to former Prince Andrew. It was taken, she said, just before she learned she was to have sex with him. Trafficked to the then royal by Epstein and his girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell.
He took a photo and your arm is round her waist.
They are allegations the disgraced Andrew has long denied.
You've seen the photo?
I've seen the photograph.
How do you explain that? With your arm round
That's me, but whether that's my hand or whether that's the position, I have simply no recollection.
There it is. Dude, it's the picture is right there. Before AI was a thing. Stupid.
Of a photograph ever being taken.
He needs to stop with all of these lame excuses. We're sick of hearing it. This is a real photo.
I don't believe that. I don't believe it's real for a second. In fact, I'm sure it's not.
But now, all these years later, Virginia has been vindicated. Buried in the Epstein files was this email from the now convicted Maxwell, referring to the disputed photo.
Which appears to contradict Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's long-held suggestion that the now infamous photo was not real.
It's the proof, if anyone needed it, Virginia was telling the truth all along. Proof too that in their denials about this photo, Maxwell and Andrew were lying.
Yep.
The bittersweet revelation comes too late for Virginia, who last year took her life on her property an hour north of Perth.
Which many believe she did not take her life.
Fellow survivor Jenna Lisa Jones is devastated. Her friend is not here to witness the global reckoning Virginia was long fighting for. How do you feel about that? Virginia's truth being exposed in that way?
I wish she was here to see that. I know that would mean so much to her. She fought so hard, and if they would have just believed her from the beginning, she's been saying it.
For many survivors, these files represent the only public accountability left. But they're also deeply flawed, failing to identify Epstein's co-conspirators while inexplicably naming many of the victims. Do you feel honoured or let down by the release of the Epstein files?
Let down completely. Honored for them to run us through the mud again. There's been over 40 minors, unredacted, with their names, addresses, identifying information, some as far as social security numbers.
Wow.
That was a straight slap in the face to the survivors.
It was a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did.
It's laughable how
These
horribly it was
failings of
handled.
the Epstein files amplified the tragedy that for 2 decades, the institutions tasked with oversight, from law enforcement to both sides of politics, have spent more energy managing the fallout than delivering justice.
And I'm sure many of you, when you read that alleged FBI report, probably thought to yourself, wow, this really cracks our narrative that we've been trying to push about this president for many years. So we're moving on from that.
But the American public is not ready to move on. The survivors are not going to move
True.
on. And I'm not going to move on until we see some men perp walked to prison.
This is a criminal operation that went on for years, and it could not have happened if Epstein was just on his own.
Of course not.
The Jeffrey Epstein saga is not about one man. It is about a society that let him get away with treating young women as disposable people. From working-class Brooklyn to the upper reaches of global power, Jeffrey Epstein's trajectory exposed a world that doesn't just tolerate predators, it protects them. What do you think the Epstein files show about us, about humanity, or lack of it?
I think the Epstein files are a mirror. If you've learned all of this about what we know now from the Epstein files, and you're still dispassionate, or want to move on, or don't care, it means you're not willing to take up for the weakest people in our society. If you won't take up for a 14-year-old girl who's being sexually abused, if you won't take up for that person, when we're showing you this happened, what are you made of?
I worry that they're not even gonna have to answer for any of this. And that's just heartbreaking.
And unfortunately, it's a sad truth that they may not have to.
It never goes away. It haunts you and it sneaks up on you in the worst ways. There shouldn't be so much of the shame that we carry. This shame is not for us to carry, it's for them to carry.
Now, I think it's important that we get to see what these women have to say. So I'm going to link a video for you right here, taking you to one of the interviews of an Epstein victim. This gives you all of the insight for what these girls endured. Go check out that video, and I'll see you guys over there.